Hello, this is Lou Halprin, reading one of the past tense articles published in the Stow Independent. The article today is about a ruckus in Gleasondale. At the recent 50th anniversary celebration of the Stow Historical Society, Ralph Fuller, article of Stow Things, mentioned about Phineas Feather, who back in 1911 shot a worker at the Gleasondale Mills in Gleasondale. Phineas was a superintendent at the mills for years until he left in 1910 and was replaced by Charles Roberts. Phineas thought he was owed more termination money from his boss, A.D. Gleason, than was paid. After many attempts to get those funds, Phineas came to the mill with a gun ready to shoot Mr. Gleason if he did not get his money, but accidentally shot Mr. Roberts instead. Here are some details taken from an article in the Old Boston Journal dated March 28, 1911, and found hiding in the Stow vault. On the day of the shooting, Feather entered the mill and went to the office. Mr. Gleason saw him, and at the spur of the moment decided to pay him what he asked just to get rid of him. Mr. Gleason told the superintendent Roberts to do this, but for some reason Feather instead backed to the office door, drew a revolver, and fired. But rather than the bullet hitting Mr. Gleason, instead hit Mr. Superintendent Roberts. He was at work in the mill office when Feather entered and was shot instead, the bullet lodging in his right lung. At the same moment, Mr. Gleason, the millionaire owner of the mill, pounced upon the would-be assassin from behind. He brought Feather to the floor with such force that his nose was broken. Miss Lena Hickley, a stenographer in the office, ran into the mill shrieking. Robert Bavis, one of the mill hands, rushed into the office and, throwing himself into the struggling heap on the floor, was shot himself in his right hand. The three men were able to overpower Feather, but before they did, Feather made an unsuccessful attempt to shoot himself. The bullet with which he intended to end his own life passed between his arm and his left side and inflicted only a slight flesh wound. After he was overpowered, Feather was bound with heavy ropes until he couldn't move a muscle, and he yelled at Mr. Gleason, "I'll get you yet." In the meantime, Superintendent Roberts had sunk weakly into a chair with his hands pressed over the bleeding wound in his breast. The reports of the revolver echoing through the mill threw the hands into excitement as they all rushed towards the office. After they learned what had occurred, the hot-headed amongst them threatened to wreak summary vengeance on Feather, but were restrained with difficulty by the more level-headed companions. Roberts was rushed to the Clinton Hospital in the Gleason automobile. At the same time, Feather, trussed like a fowl, was being driven into Hudson, where he was lodged in a cell in the police station. No additional information was known about what happened to Phineas, but David Mark of Maynard, author of Maynard History and Life Outdoors, provided some additional details about what happened after that. According to the Maynard News, in January 1912, Phineas appeared in court, did not testify, and a decision was reached to remove him to the hospital for the criminally insane at Bridgewater, where he was placed under observation to determine his mental condition. In 1914, he was granted a new trial for assault with a deadly weapon, was convicted December 1914, and then pardoned in 1915, never to be heard from again. So, as radio commentator Paul Harvey would say, now you know the rest of the story.